Hello, Brick Sculptors, and welcome back to Brick Sculpt. This is Chris, and today we're going to talk about angling plates. Now, if you watch my videos, I just did a remake video on the Pythagorean triples and putting plates at angles, and I got a comment that kind of hit home with me and made me start playing around with parts. And I discovered so much more about attaching angles to the generic Lego grid. Let me explain. The comment had suggested that if you were to take 2 points on a plate, like this and this, that these points would be the same distance if I had rotated it over. For example, if this is my number 1 point, and this is number 2, and a plate could fit just like this, at that same distance, it would also fit over here. At this point, mirrored on this side. But instead of moving the plate over from here to here, I can rotate the plate from here to here and stick it at an angle. Amazing. Now, I kind of knew this, but I never actually put it into a practical sense. And so I started to tinker with this and see, well, there's lots of attachment points in the bottom here. How many places can I put it? And let me show you what I figured out. Now we're going to start using 2x6s. Now keep in mind, the shorter the plate is, the less positions it'll mount. The longer it is, the more angles you can get out of it. But we're going to start with a standard 2x6 plate. Also keep in mind, this only works on plates wider than 1 wide, because you have to be able to offset the 2 studs. But this will work on 3 wide, 4 wide, 5 wide. They don't make 5 wide. Only 5 long, 1x5. 6 wide, any width, it will work. But we're just going to demonstrate with 2x6s. So first I started to lay out all the positions you can put 2 studs on the back on opposite sides. So we got here. We can move a stud down 1, down 2, down 3. So those should make 4 different angles. But then looking at these, I said, well, you could also put studs in the middle, like this, and do a jumper effect, because it will attach in the middle of 4 studs on the grid. You could also move it down, down again, and down again. So you potentially have 8 different angles. Now again, if these were longer than 6, you would have even more. Now, 2 of these are tan, and that wasn't because I ran out of gray plate. The reason these 2 are tan is they're actually duplicates. They are unique. I don't have this attachment on these other plates, but when you have this right in the middle, if you draw a straight line through the middles of these studs, you can see this angle is going to be exactly the same as this one here. It's just going to be shorter in the connection point. This one is going to be the same as the one that's up 4 studs right here. So these are actually duplicates. So really, it's only 6 attachment points. Now you might be saying, why didn't I go lower on this? Well, when you go here and here, that would turn it a full 90 degrees. And any lower on the middle tubes would get in the way of the original stud. So these 2 are duplicates. And if we put these in order of angle, it's actually going to look like this. These 2 first, and then we're going to go to these 2. Because these are in the center, they're not going to move the plate over as much. And then here's our duplicates. Let me go ahead and show you the angles that these all make by placing them here on the grid. The original orientation would be like this. We're going to slide it over. And there's our angle. Same thing here. Slightly more laxed angle. Again. And you can see they're just slowly starting to turn more and more. So there we have it. You can see all the different angles on them. Now, this isn't everything, because we still haven't gone completely flat. But the cool thing is, we can do the opposite of these as well, where all we do is switch the studs to the other side, and it'll do the opposite angle that we see here. So if we want to go to a full 90-degree turn, we can start working our way backwards. Now in the middle here, you can see we went past 45 degrees. 45 degrees would have got us right down the middle here. And 45 degrees is not possible, at least I don't think it is, to accomplish in this method. I did find, although this might be illegal, that if you put 2 studs on these with 4 in the middle, so 6 spacing, and you attach them on the 45, 1 on a stud and 1 3 spaces away, but on the middle jumped stud, this will do a possibly illegal 45-degree connection. But because these are past 45, well, my next thought was maybe this one needs to be over here and this one needs to be over here. So I decided to switch them. Get my star-spangled knife here. And when I switched these, I found a really interesting phenomenon. So you can see these are just mirrored of each other. And when I switch them, something weird happens. So when I switch them, they look like they make sense now, but these two are actually parallel. And these two are actually parallel. So that kind of got me thinking. If these are the exact same angle, they probably share some attachment points. Because that means if I put this portion right here, that this portion would end up right over here. And then I might be able to have more attachment points, just like that. And it turns out you can do some really interesting stuff using this pattern. Let me show you what I mean. So this grid here is really nicely laid out. And this is basically the combination of those 2 pieces and their attachment points. It doesn't look like it, but it is. If you take a 2x6, attach it at one point, and start to rotate it, this will click down in 3 attachment points. And you can put one right next to it that will connect 2 attachment points. In fact, you can take any size plate and completely stick it down. Crazy. We've basically created an entire new grid where any of these plates will fit. The only real exception is super small pieces that might fall in between, but you can attach just about anything on this grid. Setting this up looks fairly simple, but it's actually kind of complicated to keep this pattern working nice and consistent like this. Let me show you how I do it. So the easiest way I've found to make this pattern is to set up 2x2 tiles, and you do kind of a windmill pattern. Now there are 2 different ways you can do this depending on which angle you're looking for in a certain position. You can do it so they rotate kind of this way or the opposite, and that's what I have set up here. And when you stair step these tiles like this, it's real simple to fill in the middles with these 1x1s. Now keep in mind, I used 1x1 round green with open studs. These don't have to be round and they don't have to have open studs. I just have a ton of these. That's why I used them. You can put normal 1x1 plates in here. It'll work exactly the same. But that pattern has to be perfect. If any of these are off by one position, and it's really hard when you're doing it this way, it won't work. So using the tiles really is helpful, and if you're going to attach a building or a plate on this, it gives it a lot more support when you have the tiles under it because it goes flush. So you might be asking what the difference between this and this is, and it's simply going to be the angles and the positioning of the plates. Let me show you. If we put a plate down here, another one here, you can just make a square out of these. We do the same thing over here. You can see they're in two different orientations. It's the same exact square, they're just rotated. And if we measure the angles on this, I have the world's worst protractor here, but it will work well enough for what we're doing here. I can measure the angle on this, and this is a ballpark, so this is not super scientific here, but this angle here is about 37 degrees. The opposite angle over here comes out about 53 degrees. And it'll be the same thing on this one, just the opposite. This side over here will be the 53 degrees, and this side over here will be the 37 degrees. It's just rotated. So depending on how you're trying to, this would be super useful if you wanted to take an entire building and just plop it into a town at an angle. You make this grid, you can stick it down anywhere as long as it's at that angle. The other cool thing is you can still work in the regular Lego grid doing this. All of this still works the same, obviously. So you can work in two different dimensions of rotation here. And the other nice thing is, it's easy to stick something at an angle, but these grids give this about a 20% attachment, meaning 1 in 5 studs from the original grid are showing. So with these 2x6s, 2 of them are going to have 3 studs in them, and 2 of them are going to have 2 studs in them. Which means 3 out of 12, you're talking a quarter of the studs. 2 out of 12 is 1/6 of the studs. Average those together, it's a 1/5 of the studs. And it makes sense because for every 1x4, you have a 1x1. So it's really 1 in 5 studs are there, which is pretty good for attaching. Another crazy thing is you can actually add more studs if you want to. Let me show you how. Right in the middle of these pieces, you can put a 2x2 jumper. Now this will have one limitation, but if you're looking for more clutch power, you can have this grab a plate with even more connections. Those 2x2 jumpers are just going to hit the middle tubes. The only exception is if you fill the entire thing with 2x2 jumpers, you better be using a pretty big plate, because the one thing that won't connect is the edges. These edge pieces will interfere with the jumpers in this grid. On the standard grid, it doesn't matter what size plate it is, you'll never hit an edge. But on this one, you will. But it is a good way to add more stud connections. That'll give you 2 out of 5. So it'll give you 40% connection, which is pretty good. Now I discovered another crazy thing about this grid. You can take 1x1s and actually slide them in between all the studs, and it's a perfect fit right in between these connections. This will work with the double jumpers, but it will also work just on the standard grid, just like this. I don't know how useful this is, but I did some testing with it to see if I could find a way to make an actual square out of this. Because one problem with this is you can't put a plate right next to it. You have to go over here, which makes kind of an irrational gap that you're not going to get a lot of use out of. So I tried to figure, okay, how far do I have to go before I can get to an even number and connect 2 plates? And so I kind of did some practice here. I put another plate at a 90-degree angle to it, just like this. And I kind of just went line by line to see if they lined up. I'll save you the testing section. And I found out that 20 studs lines up beautifully at 90-degree angles right here. I have to believe this is legal. It's just too perfect to not be, but there is a possibility that it's not legal. And you can see here, I created a 20 stud long piece, and it will span that perfectly. So you could make a 10 by 20 or really any length by 20 rectangle or square and fit it in between these studs. It isn't going to play well with the rest of the grid, but if you built that into scenery, you could put the building on studs like this, and then you could put a platform on this and you could make a building out of this. So pretty cool. As for the angles of this square here, let's go ahead and take a look where they come out. Again, let's grab the world's worst protractor. Now keep in mind, math is not my thing. I'm a Lego person. I was always pretty bad at math. If they taught math with Lego, I'd probably be a lot better at it. So keep in mind, I'm not going to have equations, and that's just not my way of thinking. It's not how I know this stuff. I just go by trial and error. So I know in the comments I'm going to get a bunch of awesome equations, and I love hearing that stuff, so thank you. But keep in mind, mine's going to be very rough and dirty. I'll leave the math up to you guys. So here we go. I can measure the angle of this one here. And this comes out to it's about 18 to 18 and a half. And then over here, this is about 71 and a half. Which makes sense because the two angles together should equal 90 degrees. Same with these. We had a 53 and a 37, and those added together equal 90 degrees. So I hope you guys liked this video. I hope you found this useful. I know for a fact I will use this in future mocks in kind of this application here. If you guys have any questions or concerns, please leave them below in the comments. I love to see the math on this stuff. I'd love to hear your input on it. I don't believe I'm the first one to discover this. I'm sure this has been done before, but it definitely opened my eyes because I was just tinkering around with this and kind of figured out this awesome grid just on my own. And I don't know. Let me know if you've ever tried this technique before. Well, that's all I got for this time. If you guys like this video, please like and subscribe. I'm going to do more videos just like this in the future, and we will see you next time.